So you probably picked up your phone this morning, right? Like before you even got out of bed.
Oh, yeah. It's basically muscle memory for most of us at this point.
Exactly. You think you think you're just doing a quick check,
Yeah.
clearing a few emails, maybe glancing at the headlines, swiping through a couple of texts.
Just catching up on the world.
Right. But within like 5 minutes, your brain is already processing some massive geopolitical crisis. 3 targeted ads for products you've literally never heard of, and the heavily curated life updates of 50 different acquaintances.
It's overwhelming when you actually map it out.
It really is. It becomes this low-grade, constant cognitive hum.
Mm.
And that really is the reality of information anxiety. It isn't always some dramatic panic attack,
No, not at all.
It's more this creeping, relentless sensation of just drowning in a sea of fragmented data. Your cognitive hardware is being pushed continuously beyond its natural limits, and your capacity for deep, sustained focus just slowly erodes.
Well, the thing is, the human neurological system simply did not evolve to process the sheer volume of disparate inputs we subject it to now. I mean, daily.
Yeah, we're just not built for it.
Exactly. We are experiencing this completely unprecedented explosion of information, and the resulting state is one of profound psychological paralysis.
Right.
We are hyper-connected to the global grid, yet we're increasingly isolated from our own immediate reality. We're locked in this cycle of reactive consumption rather than intentional action.
And the modern reflex to this exhaustion, like what do we usually do? We seek out a modern solution.
Oh, always. Download another app.
Right. We look for a new time management framework or productivity app to block the other apps or some Silicon Valley optimization hack.
More tools to manage the tools.
Exactly. But today, this deep dive is, well, it's essentially a rescue mission. And we are drawing from a completely different paradigm.
A much older one.
Yeah, we are going to explore how the ultimate antidote for your modern fractured mind was actually mapped out roughly 2,500 years ago by the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, primarily through his foundational text, the Tao Te Ching.
And to unpack this, we are synthesizing a really compelling stack of contemporary sources.
Yeah, the sources for this one are fascinating.
They really are. We are looking at academic analyses of Taoist environmental ethics, a modern systems thinking model known as the Deep and Shallow Sustainability Intervention Framework, or DSSI for short.
Right.
And we also have these empirical studies that literally bridge the Tao Te Ching with modern clinical psychology, management theory, and, incredibly, even the carbon emission data of major corporations.
It's a wild mix. But the goal here is to translate these ancient philosophical concepts into a highly practical blueprint for reclaiming your cognitive sovereignty.
Taking back your brain.
Yes. We're going to examine the actual mechanics of how you can cut through the deafening noise of the digital age, systematically reduce your baseline of desire, and take back total, uncompromising control of your attention.
Which is so needed right now.
It really is. But to do that, we have to start with Lao Tzu's diagnosis of human distraction, which honestly feels almost unnervingly predictive of our current era.
Oh, it reads like it was written yesterday.
Yeah. There's a specific line from the sources that anchors this whole idea. It goes, "The 5 colors make man's eyes blind. The 5 notes make his ears deaf. The 5 tastes injure his palate."
That's a powerful image.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We are looking at a physiological and cognitive mechanism here. When we bombard our senses with extreme stimuli, which, today takes the form of hypersaturated screens, algorithmic feeds, endless notifications, we aren't actually increasing our perception.
No, we're doing the exact opposite. The mechanism at play here is sensory adaptation and threshold shifting.
Threshold shifting.
Yeah, so the 5 colors in Lao Tzu's context, they represented the absolute extreme limits of sensory stimulation available at that time. But today, that extreme is our baseline. When you constantly flood your neurological pathways with high-intensity inputs, your brain adapts by raising its threshold for dopamine release and sensory engagement.
So you need more just to feel anything.
Exactly. You literally become numb to subtle, nuanced reality. The constant overstimulation degrades your ability to perceive the quiet, fundamental signals of your own life.
Wow.
And the text offers a very specific countermeasure to this. It says, empty the mind, fill the belly.
Which, just to be clear, is not dietary advice.
Right. No, not at all.
Emptying the mind refers to clearing out that chaotic, swirling visual and auditory overstimulation we just talked about.
Yeah.
The blinding of the eyes.
Yeah.
And filling the belly is like a metaphor. It's about lowering your center of gravity, grounding yourself in what is substantial, internal, and fundamentally nourishing.
Grounding yourself in reality.
Right. But, I mean, this raises a pretty significant intellectual dilemma, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, the modern knowledge economy demands that we stay connected. Like, my job, and the jobs of many people listening, literally requires monitoring market trends, understanding the news cycle, processing complex data in real time.
That's true for most of us.
So how does a modern professional actually empty their mind without simply becoming willfully ignorant and, failing at their responsibilities? Wait, so is Lousy just telling us to be ignorant? Isn't staying informed a good thing?
It's a really critical distinction to make. Lousy is not advocating for ignorance at all. He is critiquing the illusion that volume equals value.
Oh, volume equals value. I like that.
Right. The sources emphasize that indulging in information gluttony actually confuses the mind and injures the spirit. In a professional context, filling the belly means identifying the structural, foundational data that actually drives your work and just ruthlessly discarding the superficial reactionary noise.
Filtering out the junk.
Exactly. It is about cultivating a state the text calls seeing the simple and embracing the uncarved block.
The uncarved block. What does that mean in practice?
Well, the uncarved block is pure potential. It is a mind that has not been continuously chiseled, fractured, and sculpted by the agendas of external algorithms and endless public opinions.
Ah, I see. So it is really about changing the quality of the consumption rather than just adjusting the volume knob.
Precisely.
But changing that quality, it requires a methodology because the modern instinct when we feel overwhelmed by information is additive.
We always want to add more.
Right. We try to solve distraction by adding more tools. We download a Pomodoro timer. We buy a fancy new planner. We subscribe to some AI summary service to read more books faster.
Right, fighting fire with fire.
Yeah, but Lousy's methodology is entirely subtractive. The text introduces this concept of decreasing daily.
Yeah, the specific phrase is Wei Dao Ri Sun. To pursue the Dao is to decrease day by day.
Decrease day by day.
We are so deeply conditioned by our economic systems to equate growth with accumulation, right? But the Taoist framework argues that true clarity actually requires systematic reduction. You strip away the artificial layers of desire and that compulsion to react.
So you just stop engaging with the noise.
Yes. And what the sources reveal is how perfectly this ancient subtractive method maps onto modern evidence-based clinical psychology.
Oh, right. The ACT therapy stuff.
Exactly. ACT, which stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy.
This is where the synthesis gets really practical for you as a listener. Because ACT is a major contemporary behavioral therapy, and its core mechanism is something called psychological flexibility and cognitive diffusion, or thought decoupling.
Right.
When people experience information anxiety, the natural autonomic response is to fight it. You feel overwhelmed by a news story, so you furiously research it, or you try to suppress the anxiety, or maybe you engage in a huge Twitter debate to exude some sort of control.
You are wrestling with the thoughts,
Right.
which, only tangles you further in them.
Yeah, it never works.
So ACT utilizes cognitive diffusion to change the way you interact with those thoughts. Instead of treating a thought like a lens that you must look through, where the thought colors your entire reality, diffusion trains you to treat the thought as an object you can look at.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Looking at it, not through it.
Exactly. So you don't say, I am overwhelmed by this crisis. You say, I am noticing that my brain is producing the thought that I am overwhelmed.
You create that critical distance.
You stop fighting the quicksand. You accept the presence of the chaotic information and the emotional response it triggers, but you fundamentally decouple your core self from it.
You strip the input of its coercive power over your behavior.
Yes.
And that psychological mechanism, that intentional decoupling, is really the practical application of Laozi's famous concept of Wu Wei.
What's fascinating here is how often Wu Wei gets misunderstood. It is frequently translated as non-action, which leads to this massive misunderstanding in the West.
People think it just means doing nothing.
Right, they think it's passivity or laziness. But it's not. It is non-coercive action.
Non-coercive action.
Yeah, it is the psychological flexibility to realize you do not actually need to intervene, categorize, and react to every piece of data that crosses your screen.
That sounds so freeing.
It is. When you practice cognitive diffusion, you are practicing Wu Wei. You are stepping out of the exhausting frictional battle for control over the uncontrollable flow of digital information.
Okay, so we are actively decreasing the inputs. We are decoupling from the reactive anxiety. But We have to look at what actually happens to the cognitive space that is left behind.
Right, the vacuum.
Yeah, if you stop the frantic consumption, if you stop the endless scrolling, there is a sudden vacuum. To address that, the sources bring in a concept from Chuang-Tzu, another foundational Taoist philosopher. He introduces the practice of fasting the mind, or Xinzai.
Inside, the physical equivalent is easy to grasp, right? You stop ingesting food so your metabolic systems can rest, repair, and reach a state of homeostasis. Well, Xinzai is the cognitive equivalent. You intentionally halt the intake of external data so your neural pathways can reset.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Chuang-Tzu describes this as emptying the self to hear with the spirit, rather than just with the ears.
Yes.
It demands entering a state of active not knowing.
And that is incredibly difficult for modern professionals.
Oh, almost impossible.
Yeah.
We have built our entire identities around being the person who knows. Like, if you were sitting in a Tuesday morning strategy meeting, you are expected to have an informed opinion, a predictive model, a read on the room.
You have to have the answers.
Right. So how does not knowing function as a tool rather than a liability in a high-stakes environment?
By preventing premature optimization.
Premature optimization. Okay, tell me more.
Well, when you enter a complex situation, desperately clinging to the need to know, you usually force the new information into your pre-existing, often flawed frameworks.
You see what you want to see.
Exactly. Not knowing, in the context of Xinzai, is a state of highly alert, non-judgmental listening. You are absorbing the reality of the situation, the actual data, the subtle team dynamics, the unstated risks, without immediately trying to force a conclusion.
And the sources actually connect this directly to the modern concept of deep work and true concentration.
They do.
It changes the whole nature of focus. I mean, modern hustle culture treats focus like a muscle you have to violently flex.
Oh, yeah, force it.
Right. You force yourself to stare at the spreadsheet. You aggressively block out distractions. It is coercive and honestly deeply exhausting.
It burns you out.
But the focus achieved through mental fasting, through Xinzai, sounds much closer to a flow state.
It is the ultimate flow state because it lacks internal friction.
No internal friction.
The text describes this as Zizuji Shiljingdu, which translates to reaching the extreme of emptiness, holding fast to stillness.
Reaching the extreme of emptiness, holding fast to stillness.
Right. When you aren't expending massive amounts of cognitive energy suppressing the urge to check your phone or managing the anxiety of 100 open mental tabs, your attention just becomes pristine.
Wow.
The work flows effortlessly because you are acting in pure alignment with the task. You regain absolute sovereignty over your own attention.
So you are no longer the passive subject of a dopamine-driven algorithm.
Exactly. You are the architect of your own cognitive environment.
The personal ROI on this is profound. Reclaiming that sovereignty fundamentally changes how you experience your daily life.
It changes everything.
But, and this is where it gets even bigger, the sources suggest this framework scales far beyond personal productivity.
It goes to a global scale.
Yeah. The way we treat our own attention, this relentless drive for more inputs, more data, more dopamine, is exactly how we treat the planet.
It's the exact same pattern.
Right. The core driver of your late-night doom scrolling is the subconscious belief that more extraction equals more value. So let's look at what happens when that exact same psychological flaw is scaled up to the level of global industry.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources utilize the DSSI, the Deep and Shallow Sustainability Intervention Framework.
Okay, the DSSI.
This model addresses a critical failure in how we currently approach global ecological crises like climate change and resource depletion.
Because right now, our solutions aren't really working.
No, because most modern solutions are shallow interventions. We implement a minor carbon tax, we switch to paper straws, we try to optimize the efficiency of our extraction.
We're just treating the symptoms.
Exactly. We are tweaking the variables without changing the underlying equation.
We are trying to out-innovate a problem that was created by our innovations without actually questioning the mindset that demands endless growth in the first place.
Right, and the DSSI framework argues that to achieve genuine sustainability, we require a deep intervention.
A deep intervention.
Which it defines through the lens of pre-paradigmatic metacognition.
That's a mouthful.
I know, it's very academic. But basically, this means examining and altering the foundational cognitive paradigms, like the source code, that dictate how we perceive our relationship with the world, long before we attempt to engineer a new solution.
Oh,
because the current global paradigm is deeply anthropocentric.
anthropocentrism.
Right, being the assumption that human beings exist outside of nature and that the natural world is merely a stockpile of resources waiting to be optimized for our utility.
We treat it like an infinite warehouse.
We treat the planet's resources the way a virus treats a host cell, multiplying and extracting endlessly until the host is literally compromised. We mistake aggressive short-term expansion for long-term survival.
And this is where the sources provide a truly fascinating empirical validation of Taoist philosophy at the macro scale.
Oh, this is the study on corporate emissions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the papers analyzes a massive data set of corporate carbon emissions from listed enterprises in China between 2010 and 2020. And the researchers didn't just look at formal environmental regulations, they looked at informal cultural institutions. Specifically, they measured the geographical proximity of corporate headquarters to historical Taoist and Buddhist temples.
Wait, really? They measured how close the offices were to temples?
Yes. And they cross-referenced that cultural prominence with the company's ESG disclosures and operational decisions.
That is a brilliant methodological approach, measuring the ambient cultural influence on modern corporate boards. So what were the specific operational changes they observed?
They found a statistically significant inhibitory effect on corporate carbon outputs in these areas.
So they actually polluted less?
Yes, but the how is the crucial part. The influence of indigenous religious culture acted as a kind of shadow governance structure where formal regulations were weak.
Oh, wow.
Boards operating in these culturally influenced zones were demonstrably more likely to favor long-term R&D investment and green innovation over short-term resource extraction.
Because the culture around them valued balance.
Exactly. The cultural values of harmony and decreasing daily permeated the decision-making matrix. When the leadership internalized the philosophical warning against endless greed, it fundamentally altered their corporate strategy.
It provides empirical backing to the Dao De Jing's assertion that knowing when to stop prevents danger,
That's the exact quote.
which is the exact mechanism missing from the global economy. A system built entirely on the premise of perpetual quarterly growth physically does not possess the brakes to stop itself.
Which brings us to the concept of deep ecology.
Right. Deep ecology.
Formulated by environmental philosophers like Holmes Rolston, whose work is heavily cited in our sources as being deeply indebted to Laozi.
Okay, so what does deep ecology argue?
It completely dismantles that anthropocentric virus-host relationship we were talking about. It asserts that all beings possess intrinsic value independent of their utility to human needs.
Intrinsic value, not just instrumental value.
Right. Laozi viewed humanity as bound by the exact same natural laws, the Tao as the rivers, the mountains, and the forests.
So wait, is the key to stopping climate change? Putting down my phone.
Well, not exactly just putting down the phone. It's about shifting the foundational source code of our desires.
Okay, I see.
It is the shift from instrumental value like, what can this forest do for my profit margin, or what can this data feed do for my dopamine receptors, to intrinsic value.
Right.
And that shift is the ultimate deep intervention.
Mm.
When you alter the source code from a paradigm of I must extract and control to survive to I must harmonize and recognize limits, systemic transformation arises organically.
From resonance rather than coercive control.
Exactly. It is macro-level wu-wei. You aren't forcing the environment to bend to human will through massive geoengineering projects. You are aligning human activity with the existing sustainable rhythms of the ecosystem.
The micro completely mirrors the macro.
It really does.
The crisis of the burning, depleted planet is the exact same crisis as the exhausted, overstimulated modern brain.
They are symptoms of the same disease.
So the practice of digital detox, of mentally fasting and decreasing daily, is not just a life hack to make your Tuesdays slightly less stressful.
No, it's way bigger than that.
By putting down the phone, by actively stopping your personal cycle of anxious, endless consumption, you're actually training your mind in the exact pre-paradigmatic shift required to halt the global cycle of ecological destruction.
You are unlearning the fundamental habit of extraction.
You are systematically moving your consciousness away from the relentless anxiety of more and discovering the profound sustainable power of enough.
Finding that balance.
You reclaim your attention, and in doing so, you embody the very philosophy required to rebalance the broader systems we all inhabit.
It starts with the mind.
It does. We started today by acknowledging the heavy, suffocating reality of information anxiety. We look at the sheer exhaustion of navigating an era where fragmented data relentlessly demands our attention.
And it is exhausting.
We found that the cure isn't more data. It isn't fighting the noise or downloading another tool to manage the chaos. It is the radical act of emptying the mind and filling the belly.
Decreasing daily.
Right. It is utilizing the cognitive diffusion of ACT therapy to step out of the battle for control. It's practicing the mental fasting of Sinzai and realizing that knowing when to stop is where true sovereignty lies.
Beautifully said.
As we leave you today, consider the ancient warning we discussed that the 5 colors blind the eye. Think about the vibrant, high-definition, endlessly scrolling colors on your smartphone screen today, and the constant stream of data it presents to you every waking hour.
Just think about it.
Ask yourself, what quiet, fundamental truth about your own life, your own potential, is currently being blinded by that glow? And what might you finally be able to see if you turn the screen off?